Chris, show 95. We are, and we have a great guest today. So I'm looking forward to that. Like we're almost fully legit. Almost.
You know, it's funny because I went and I saw a psychic the other day about our show, just being like, hey, are we going to be successful? Are we not going to be, are we going to make it to 100 episodes? All those sorts of things. But I knew she was phony the moment she took my check.
That's one of those you have to figure out. You have to connect some dots in your head.
I mean, I gave you the benefit of the doubt, Anthony. Sometimes,
yeah, which is usually not a good call.
A little bit more subtle. Anthony, how much in growth are you leaving unrealized by leading like everyone else? I don't think this applies to you, Anthony. You lead like nobody else. However, in 1874, a young clerk named James Ritty ran a saloon in Dayton, Ohio. Lovely town. Every night, his employees stole from the till. Rather than fire his workers or post guards, Ritty invented something completely unexpected. The first cash register. His incorruptible cashier didn't just solve theft problem. It birthed a billion-dollar industry and forever changed how business tracked money. Today, leaders face similar choices. Follow the conventional path or create audacious solution nobody's expecting. Today, Anthony, on How to Founder, we're going to be talking about leadership styles. I'm Chris Franks. With me is the person who has multiple personality leadership styles, Mr. Anthony Franco.
I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a leadership stylist.
That is really good. I'm looking at our guest off stage, and he is chuckling at you. Let's, without further ado, we're going to bring on, do have a great guest. Mr. Roy Osing is a guy who took a startup to $1 billion in annual sales. He's the only author, entrepreneur, executive leader who delivers practical and proven audacious, unheard of ways to produce high-performing businesses and successful careers. And Anthony, also Roy's out of fucks. He has no more fucks.
So I guess I'm checking that explicit filter on Spotify when I load this up.
Go run through that barrier of not cussing really early, so we just get that one out of the way. Welcome, Roy. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to the conversation. So let's just open it up. What is leadership styles? What does it mean? Why should I care about what leadership style? I mean, I'm the boss, right, Roy? I started the company. People should adapt to me, not the other way around.
Yeah, well, first of all, leadership isn't a style, all right? Just to get that off the table. I mean, there's too many people that are dealing with notions of charisma and style, etc. I mean, leadership is a huge responsibility, and your role is one and only one thing. And that is to drive superior performance in the organization. And so the challenge is to figure out how to do that. Now, in our particular case, I mean, we were tasked with having to build a data company into an internet company in a world that was brand new, because we sat in a telephone company, for heaven's sakes. And so we were given this challenge. And so the growth curve on this was a huge challenge. My job as the leader was to figure out how to take advantage of that market and actually deliver shareholder value through growing top line revenues. Okay, so I didn't have a style. I just had an approach. Okay, I dealt with unconventional stuff because all the conventional stuff didn't work, and I was getting paid to grow revenues. And so I guess if you boiled it down, I'm kind of a simple dude. I can relate to people. I listen to people, and I do what frontline people tell me to do because they are the executioners, and execution drives results. And so, no, you know what? Style, the word style just pisses me off, quite frankly, because it's faddish. Okay.
Well, but you're immediately hitting between two really interesting points, because you'll hear this, and not just in kind of the more, hey, I'm a guru type stuff, but the actual literature and research around this, which is successful people do two things and do two things well, which is the first one is to remain authentic. They're not fakey. They're who they are, that they show up in a way that is themselves. The second is that they shift their communication style to be better understood by their audience. So it's not necessarily leadership style, but it's the sophistication to know how they're communicating about who they are. Does that resonate or no, Roy?
Absolutely. Okay. On the communication piece, I mean, too many leaders delegate everything. I mean, look at, once you have got a strategy built for your organization or your business, I mean, a lot of people bail out. A lot of leaders ghost themselves and give it to somebody else to actually sell to the organization or the people that report to them. I mean, that's crazy, right? I mean, your job as a leader and from a communications point of view is you need to sell the journey. Because if you don't sell the journey, nobody's going to go with you on it. And guess what? No performance happens. And so again, I reiterate, the role here is to relate what you do with driving performance of the organization. And so the communication style is absolutely critical. Look at authenticity. I'll say it. You can't learn it. You need to be it. Okay. And the people that preach, authenticity 101, here's how to do it. It's all bullshit, quite frankly. You have to feel, right, that you want to serve people. You want to feel that you want to listen to people and be guided by their judgment, not your own. That's a really hard thing to learn. In fact, I would suggest you can't do it. And most of the failed leaders that I've seen, one of the basic reasons for that is they don't listen. They think that their role is to sit in an ivory tower, right, and preach platitudes to the organization that descends upon them with the expectation they're going to go out and do something. Well, the reality is, if you don't, as a leader, if you do not capture the hearts and the souls of people in your organization, then you will fail, and you deserve to fail. And so, you CEOs and board members out there, you need to hire people into leadership positions that are actually authentic people. I mean, it starts with recruitment. Training, I don't think it works all that well. And you need mentors. You need a mentor that's been there and done it that can help you along the way.
Anthony, one of the things that I think is hardest about what Roy said, and I completely agree with that approach, but founders oftentimes are thrust into leadership roles that they're not necessarily prepared for. They step out of a role where, I was middle manager when I stepped out and started my first company. They're not always in a role where they've come up through an organization and developed, like what Roy is saying, that sense of confidence to be authentic. It's a pretty big conflict, Anthony. And this is something I think we see relatively often, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think all leaders are as weak as their naivete is when they enter leadership. So we all have. My first true entrepreneurial gig where I had to lead other people. I was so idealistic and so dumb, thinking that I knew better than the other leaders. Once you get into it, and once you do it for long enough, you start to recognize that if you treat it like a craft, you realize that leadership is really hard, and it's more of a. I love what Roy said, frontline. It's more of a frontline job. If you're not in touch with the front line, if you're not working alongside elbow to elbow with the people that are getting stuff done, you're doing it wrong. And one other thing that Roy said about authenticity that resonated in my head, I'll say it a different way. If you say you're authentic, then you're not.
There's two pieces there, and I want to ask two questions, Roy. But the first one is exactly around this, which is, we feel like as founders, we might be more experts in a particular field. We might just be bigger risk takers, et cetera. But so often the things that make you a good founder and you're thrust into leadership, we pretend like we're Jamie Dimon, or like we try to pretend like we're a chairperson of, a publicly traded company. And Jamie Dimon is just being himself, but we just all assume that that's how we need to behave to run a 5-person company. Do you see that in your work, Roy?
Well, totally. I mean, I work a lot with CEOs of startups to help them.
I'm
And
sorry.
Yeah. I know.
Exactly. You've got the same illness we do.
No, Jesus, I just love it. Okay, because it's like a green field, right? And so one of the first things I say to them is, "What's your context?" And they go, "What?" I said, "What is your context? You have this bright idea, right? You think you're going to make $1 billion out of this bright idea. I need to understand your context." And here's where the leadership teaching starts, right? Because most startups have this product-focused notion of flogging something out there and they shall come. Reality is they won't. They need a strategy, okay? A simple one. And I've actually created my own that you can actually do in 2 days, for heaven's sakes. And so I would take them through this process, okay? As a leader, regardless of your background, you need a simple process to create a strategy for your business or your idea that sets you apart from everybody else and engages the hearts and minds of people that are close to you. It's as simple as that. And if you do that well, and if you stay with it, if you're relentless, if you're tenacious in doing it, you will be successful. One of the simple things that I created actually is around this notion of differentiation, okay? And it's called the only statement. Now, companies generally do a terrible job at differentiating themselves because they use platitudes. They use claptrap statements like, "We're the best, we're better, we're number one," and it's all bullshit, okay?
You just took all of our taglines for How to Founder.
Yeah. So if you're doing that, get your white out, because I'm an old guy. Get your white out and get rid of that stuff. I mean, it's look at aspirational claptrap stuff. They copy people, and it's narcissistic, right? It's their view of them. So I said, this isn't working. You need to have a competitive claim that clearly cuts through the clutter and the environment within which you are. So I created this notion called the only statement. The only statement is really simple. It says, we are the only ones who. We're not better, we're not best. We are the only ones who. And I've created a process to help people develop this. Because what I found is leaders of startups, when I say what makes you special, they talk about technology. They talk about tactics. They talk about AI. They talk about social media, none of which makes any sense at all unless you have a strategy and a context within which you want to give it purpose. And so we actually work through this. First step of leadership. It's not what your vision is, guys. It's what your strategic game plan is. Why is there a difference? Because a game plan is built to execute, right? A vision is aspirational. It needs to degenerate into people doing things. And isn't that a function of leadership? And so what I do is take them through this stuff. And all of a sudden, right, they've got a strategy and their chest is puffed out. And I go, hey, that was a leadership act you just did in the last 48 hours. How does it feel? And this one guy says, I can't believe it. I know what to do now. And I said, okay, I got goosebumps, by the way, because I know this guy. I just got goosies thinking of this. They know what to do. They go out of the door and they start executing on something that is really simple, but it's effective, okay? And so it's not so much, we tag everything leadership, but when you're just the founder, okay, you're struggling to be relevant. And I'm saying to you, relevance comes from creating context for your idea, right? And there's a simple way that I created, and I'm not pushing my own wares here, but there's nobody else there that can create a strategic plan in 48 hours and be executing it on the 49th. So it works, and it works for founders because they have precious little time and resources to get stuff done, right? And so that's where you want to start, and then you start to grow. The only other thing I will say, and then I'll pass it back to you guys, is you need a mentor. You need mentors, not the standard mentor with 77 letters behind their name. Okay, I want MBAs. They're Masters in Business Achievement. They're not Masters in Business Admin. Now, I'm not beating up MBAs. That's fine, but it's not enough. You need people that have been there and done that, not people that preach blue ocean strategies. I want red ocean experts that can help me through this dire position we always face ourselves with: too much competition, too much change in customer demand, too many regulations, okay? And so you start to go that way. And you need a mentor who has been there and done that. Find one. Listen to them, okay? And please do not be guided by the number of letters behind their name. It's intellectually dishonest.
Yeah, Anthony has an MBA.
Yeah, I have an MBA. I spent $400 on it.
Well, if it's a master's in business achievement, we can talk.
Yeah, well, I mean, since it's completely fake, he can probably just cross it out on his.
Yeah, I'll send it to the printer and get another one.
Yeah,
no problem.
Just cross it out and then. Just
By the way, you can't use that because that's mine, and I'm going to charge you for it. I'll just.
Copyrighted.
I'm going to say I got Masters of Business Achievement from Osing University. It's that's.
There's one other point. I mean, Roy, you've given us a lot to chew on early, but I want to ask one other point, and Anthony, I want to get your take on this, which is we started by talking about this myth that you need to act and behave like somebody that wears a three-piece suit, et cetera. The other really major piece is there's a myth about having to be the expert. And we talked about it, but I want to press on it just a moment, which is when we start as leaders, a lot of the time we start with this notion that I have to be the person that has every answer to every question. And that turns out to be a terrible way to lead because, to Roy's point, we're not listening to people. We're just going out and being like, well, I have the answer. I've got the answer to every question. Thank you. You're welcome for my presence. That's another one of the big, I think, leadership pitfalls that we see with founders, which is they kill themselves because they decide that they have to be the person that's in charge of everything. Agree or disagree with that, Anthony?
I sort of agree, sort of disagree. So I find you don't have to have the answer to every question, but you have to be the most curious of the bunch. As the leader, you have to have the strongest curiosity gene of the entire organization. So what that usually means is you ask the best and most questions. Therefore, if you're doing it long enough, you should have the best sense of the entire organization. So you don't. I think curiosity is the thing that drives entrepreneurs to be great leaders. And so, sort of agree, sort of disagree. Roy, what do you think?
Well, again, I'm a context guy, so I go back to my basic premise that if you want to grow your business, if you want to breathe life into your idea, if you want to transform this brave idea into a crude deed, then you need to have two things. You need to have a just about right strategy, and you need to be able to execute flawlessly. So I'm an 80% execution guy, a 20% planning guy, because I think we spend way too much time planning, and we just deal with academic pedantics when we do it, SWATs and bots and COTS and all that kind of stuff. So then it erodes to, well, what do you do? How do you execute well? Because execution drives performance. The plan does not drive performance. Execution drives performance, okay? And so what do you do with execution? Well, where do you go? Well, it occurred to me really early on that I didn't know how to execute because that wasn't my job. I was a strategic context dude. My job was to mobilize hearts and souls to go on a journey. Well, where are those people? Well, they're not in my office, and they're not in the office beside me, and they're not in the office above me. They're out there in the organization dealing on the coal face with customers and competitors all the time. So if I want to execute, I've got to figure out what's preventing them from doing their job really, really well. Again, people talk about, well, you got to go out and wander around the organization. Tom Peters coined this management by wandering around 100 years ago, et cetera, trying to introduce the notion that leaders need to spend time with their people. I've taken that one step further because I don't think management by wandering around is good enough. It's leadership by serving around. Now, what does that mean? It means I'm going to embed myself in the organization, and I'm going to ask one simple question of everybody I run into. And that question is, how can I help? How can I help? It's not, did you have a nice day on Saturday? It's, how can I help? Okay. Now, what does the question mean? It says, what are the things preventing you from helping execute the strategy of this organization better? That's what it's all about. Okay. So leadership from that point of view is, I'm going to get their ideas. I'm going to use their ideas to fuel change, to bash barriers, to cut the crap, to kill dumb rules, all of which go under my tag, cleanse the inside of the organization. Because if your inside isn't clean, you can't deliver value very well. Now, who are the custodians of things, of those cleansing agents? They're the frontline people. They're the people that actually do the job. And so if you really want to do your job as a leader, you have no choice. You can never assume that you know diddly squat about execution. You need to go to the executioners and ask them, how can I help? Right? And be held accountable. I introduced this notion called the bear pit. So Roy was out on the bear pits every week, which is another way of saying cross-functional kind of like meetings where the how can I help question. And I went by myself. I was president of the company. I did not have an entourage. I was out there in a bear pit. I called it the bear pit because it was a bear pit. If you did not have the jam to stand up in front of them, then you have no right to lead. Okay. And so I was in there listening and et cetera, and I was held accountable. They would tell me things that was wrong about what was going on inside of the organization that was impeding progress and execution. It was my job to fix it. And so they held me accountable for it. And I was part of the performance management system of my direct reports. And so we inculcated that notion throughout the organization. That's the only way you can make change. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about them and how they interact with customers and competitors. And the sooner that leaders get rid of their ego, okay, and this notion that says they are the be all and end all, then we will start to see organizations perform better, people engage more in the organization. By the way, when I introduced this bear pit thing, you would not have believed how employee engagement, like I had 5,000, 6,000 people in this organization, right? Employee engagement went through the roof because finally somebody was asking, how can I help? It's a simple question. And so we need, how can I help leaders? We don't need, I know how to do this leaders, because the reality is you don't. You may think you do, but go ask a frontline person and they'll tell you whether you're full of crap or not. They really will. They're awesome folks. You just need to listen to them.
Yeah, I think it's good. So I want to, and you've already really,
Chris, can I add one thing to that? I recognize something that a flaw in myself after listening to Roy. I've always talked about this notion of servant leadership and really value servant leadership. I think I even have it in my LinkedIn bio. I'm a servant leader, which is really just fancy words of just being helpful. And I think Roy just crystallized it down to like what it should really mean is like you're just there to help. And I kind of feel stupid now for putting that on my bio because the way Roy put it was much more elegant and forgive the term authentic on how you should approach leadership. It's just you're there to help.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's an anti-Royism, which is, I just coined that phrase, Roy. To say that, like being a servant leader, it's almost an expectation that it's a more noble thing. And the reality is that you go out and listen to people and ask how you can help and make their lives better. That's not being a servant leader. It's just being a good
I'm going to be changing my LinkedIn profile today. Yeah.
That's good. I was going to say, are you doing that right now? Well, do it after this.
The other notion I just want to leave you with on that is like, I think the word is wrong. I don't think it's servant. I think it's serving. Okay. It's an activity. It's kind of like an expression, a constant, I've never thought of this before. Write this down. It's a constant behavioral expression of leadership.
It's not a noun, it's a verb.
It's serving. I don't know. Maybe it's a participle. I think it's a participle, but we won't argue on syntactical redundancy.
Well, Anthony has an MBA, so we have to defer to him.
I need to get my Oxford dictionary out.
But look at one of the reasons people don't like the word servant is because it connotes subservience. And a lot of leaders have such big egos that, well, I'm never going to be a servant. Okay, well, let's talk about serving people, okay, on an ongoing basis and make it part of your daily activity. I mean, hell, I spent so much time embedded or walking around asking how with people that I got in all sorts of trouble with my board because I was paying attention to the people executing the strategy as opposed to the pontificating people sitting in a boardroom. And the other thing I want to make is, look, this is not a leadership style, right? This is a tactic that is effective in driving the performance of the organization. And if it were not effective doing that, I wouldn't have done it. Like a lot of people say to me, oh, Roy, you get talking about cutting the crap and serving leaders and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of sexy stuff. And I said, no, It's not. It's hard.
Yeah, the brilliance of that question also is it's not just the fact that you're showing that you're there to be helpful as a leader. It also gives you insight. It's a brilliant question because it gives you insight on whether or not that person that you're asking that question to understands what their job is, what the goals are, what the vision is, because the way they answer that question really gives you an indication of how tuned into the rest of the organization they are.
Yeah, that's true. And it also, like, there's another notion that I talk about in terms of leadership. It's called line of sight leadership. One of the big reasons that there's dysfunction in the organization is people don't understand, A, the strategy, and B, what their role is in terms of executing the strategy. When you serve around and you ask the question, how can I help? I mean, that dysfunction, the gap between what they're doing and what they should be doing relative to strategy is magnified. And it gives you as a leader an opportunity to coach, right? And explain and help realign behavior to that strategic context that you're trying to achieve. So, I mean, it's got so many benefits. I mean, the other thing is, it's hard. It's hard to get yourself out doing this stuff 24/7. But if you really accept your responsibility to increase top line revenue in your business, you have to do that. You have no choice. Or you do have a choice. You don't have to do it. You'll go broke or you'll be dead. Be different or be dead. Simple as that. Oh, I got that in there. You see that?
Well done. Well done. I want to try to kind of wrangle sort of what we've learned so far. And before we get into the speed round, I've got one more kind of big, broad question. So really, Roy, I'm just going to recap, which is we have to really create that sense of a vision about where we're going. We have to make sure that understanding that this is not a theoretical and this is not something that is a nice to do. This is about driving business performance. It is a very serious tactic. It's not something that is, like Anthony's LinkedIn bio, just something he puts on to be pretty. And, it really is about a performance driving concept. And then, lots of little tidbits in between there. But really what I've gotten to from the conversation is that being with, in your words, the bear put, being out with the frontline employees, talking to the employees, talking to probably customers as well, that's where you absolutely have to show up. It's easier to sit in your office and work on Excel spreadsheets than it is to go do this work, but that's where the most value comes from. I probably missed a couple, but I want to hit on kind of one other things, which is I am a new leader. Getting a mentor, like you suggested, really, really important for me. I hear you. I need to be authentic. I need to go and I need to show up. What other things how can I do this job? It's such a hard friction because I hear you, what you're saying, Roy. Those are really good concepts. But when I first started showing up, I fell in all those traps. I pretended I was, an executive in my mind, some picture, cartoon of an executive. I decided I had to be the expert in everything and tell people exactly how to do. I didn't listen. I talked to them, etc. Along the way, to me, that was more of becoming a little bit more wise about just learning about how to do the job. But let's say that you could go back and talk to me when I was, 30 or something like that and first starting leadership roles. What other advice would you give me to work my way towards this vision of leadership?
Well, I think what I would do is, as opposed to talking about leadership, I would try and convince you that you need to create a context for your business. You need to create a context for your idea. I spoke of this earlier, and I'm going to repeat it because it is so important. It's not about practicing leadership. It's about figuring out how you're going to drive performance of the business. And when you figure that out, you will have to practice the art of leadership in order to get there. Okay. And so this whole focus on frontline people, we haven't even talked about this, but the whole focus on customer cravings as opposed to customer needs, all these smaller issues start to manifest themselves within this strategic context approach. So I'd be saying to you, Chris, what we need to do is we need to sit down for 48 hours and talk about your idea. We need to talk about your business. I need to get where you want to be in 24 months in terms of the top line revenue, because that's how to define growth. It's not about net income. It's not about, EBITDA. It's not about any of that stuff. The top line part of your business is an expression of how the markets feel about the value you're delivering. Okay. And so that's what we look at in terms of growth. I need to understand if, for example, if you're 5 million, or if you're Dick today, where are you going to be where do you want to be in 24 months? You want to be at $10 million or $5 million?
Every startup will be like, oh yeah, I'll be at $100 million in sales.
We will separate them pretty quickly. Okay. Because you have to be, it's not realistic. You have to be bold and audacious, but you have to have the jam and the ability to actually deliver to it. So that context setting process, which I call strategic game planning, is basically your first act of leadership. Let me define it that way. So your first act of leadership, Chris, will be to sit down and develop a strategic game plan for your business, your idea, your department, whatever you have in terms of responsibility. And then we're going to go from there, because depending on that context will drive the leadership requirements you have, right, to deliver. And then we'll start to shape those. But to shape anybody without an image of context is non-productive. Oh, it's like saying, where are you going to use AI? Let's use AI on our business. And I always have people say, look, what do you think? How can I implement AI? And I go, I got no idea, because I don't know what you're trying to achieve. Tell me what you're trying to achieve. It's like somebody saying, what do you think about my ad? And I go, I have no idea, because I don't know what you're trying to achieve. That's a question around context. If you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then you have no perspective on the tools and the tactics of leadership, of business management, of new product development, nothing. And yet what I find is people go to that. They go to AI, they go to the tactics, they go to social media without having the context. And then they wonder why they fail. It's so simple. If you are not anchored in what you want to achieve in your business in the next 2 years, and I'm not a 5-year guy, the 5-year plan is useless, okay? Because the 4th year never shows up, right? It never shows up. What shows up is tomorrow, the day after, and the day after that. And if you want an execution framework, you need to think about 24 periods of 30 days. Right? That is a strategic game plan approach. And some people will say, well, you can't really get progress. I says, oh, yeah. Look, I'm not into perfect plans either, right? Get it just about right, and we'll figure it out on the way. I mean, I'm not saying this has to be ridiculous, and so give me that framework. Chris, you have to have the framework, and then we'll go from there. It will fall out, and it'll be baby steps. The other thing you need to understand is there's no silver bullets in the art of leadership. There are put the textbook down, dude. Put it down. Okay. I want you to put it down and listen
it's just on my desk. It's not in my hand, Roy. I just have it sitting, just push it off the desk. Got it.
But you know what I'm saying? There's too much reliance. Okay. The expectation is, okay, I've learned it. I know all the case studies. I'm going to be in 6 figures in the first 12 months. Really? Not in my world. Not in my world. None of that stuff. That's helpful to get you to a place where you ask the next question, which is, okay, based on my learnings, how am I going to apply it? Okay, in a world of competitors, technology, regulators, politicians, etc. That imperfect world, how am I going to apply those perfect formulas in a world that is imperfect? Don't you see the dilemma? Don't you see it? You can't do it. Okay, you cannot formularize imperfection. There's another one I got today, by the way. I'm going to charge you for that.
Copyrighted.
You can't do
GM.
it. Yeah. So let's go on this journey together. Let's create a context for ourselves. You can do this, by the way, for your careers, right? I did this in my career. I had a career game plan, and it was all based on the same stuff. 24 months out, the same process that I created to actually grow the business. It's the same principles. We need that. And I have this dream that if we could actually take everybody in the middle of the bell curve, around where the y-axis is, that normal distribution curve, because my background's mathematics, if we could take them all and move them 5 points to the right, where they're adopting audacious, contrarian, the kind of stuff that we've been talking about today. Can you imagine what would happen to businesses and their productivities? Can you imagine what would happen to the economy? Could you imagine what would happen to employee engagement and happiness? It would go through the roof. But no, okay, we have a narrative in our world built around academics that holds people in the hoardy middle, okay, practicing principles, okay, that in my practical experience were irrelevant. And I'm not just giving you an opinion. I'm telling you, based on what I did, they were irrelevant. There are new things and different things that need to be dragged out and tried. For heaven's sakes, go fail a little bit, but fail within a context of what you're trying to achieve. Put the textbook down, Chris. Come to Uncle Roy. Uncle Roy will help you.
That's great. I'll have you come speak to my class later. It's great. Anthony, I want to bring up one more point. We need to get into this speed round, but I want to ask you just a distinction point. One of the things that was really clear, we say all the time, it is a founder's job to go sell, right? It's to go talk to customers early on. But as the company grows, you become a CEO, you become a leader of that company. That is, you do need to adjust and create the skills that you need to do that. But I think what Roy is saying is that same grit of going that you did early and talking to customers and selling early, you need to more or less go and do the hard work of sitting down and talking to every single one of your employees, particularly any of those that talk to customers or serve customers. It feels like that there's a through line there to me. Do you agree with that?
The only word that's coming to mind is duh.
Wow. I mean, it's pretty often I get insulted by both sides.
Wait. You're telling me I have to care about revenue and the people that help deliver on that revenue as a leader? Yes, that is absolutely the job.
The reality is, though, is that we believe that the moment we get that B round, or the moment that we get to a place where we're profitable, or we get to some imaginary place in the future, I get to relax. I get to sit in my office and, do
so
Excel
relax
spreadsheets
is the first step to your destruction.
I think it's a great place for us to transition. Roy, are you ready for this speed round?
No, but
no time for protest. Tough shit. You're speed round.
That was Roy. That was called the assumptive close right there. We just assumed you were. All right, Roy, should leaders prioritize harmony or healthy conflict in their organizations?
Leaders should figure out what they're trying to achieve and create a culture and environment within which people can do that, and the rest of it will take care of itself.
If you start plan, go ahead. Say speed round. You want to go one more point?
No, just keep going.
All right. Is strategic planning more about following or breaking industry norms and traditions?
Strategic planning is all about being the only one that does what you do. It's all about differentiation. And if you're not different, you're dead.
Does scaling require more process or more audacity?
It requires more context and more strategy. Okay. It's based on creating a revenue growth plan and then taking care of costs. You want to grow revenue disproportionately more than cost. That's what scaling is. And the problem is everybody goes at cost. No, you go at revenues, grow revenues. That's a theme we've been talking about today. Scaling starts with driving revenues.
Should founders clone their own leadership style or embrace diverse approaches throughout the organization?
Well, founders should do what they have to do to drive the performance of the organization based on some fundamental practical principles, okay, that involve listening to people, right, getting their trust, having fun, okay, but within which a context drives behavior. Leadership is not a style, okay, it's a function of driving performance of a business.
Is failure tolerance or failure prevention more valuable in leadership?
Hey, listen, if you're not failing, you're not doing anything. So get out there and fail. Never make the same mistake twice, or I'll hold you to account. But by all means, I'm going to put failing in your performance plan. Why? Because tries make progress. We don't know where we're going to be in 12 months. Okay, all we know is directionally where we'd like to be. And the only way to figure it out is to try stuff, fail stuff, and move the yardsticks like that. It's getting a nano inch worth of progress by failing. Okay, winners fail all the time. And yet, put the textbook down, Chris.
Will do. All right, Anthony, what did you learn from today's episode?
I've got a lot of little bullet points. I'll try to get through them quick. You only have one goal as a leader: drive superior performance. You need to sell the journey. Good leadership is actually a blue collar job. The only statement we're the only ones who. So use the only statement. We're the only ones who turn vision into linear motion. That's what the strategic game plan is. Just about right strategy and flawless execution plan. I don't know what I meant by that. What did I mean by that? Anyway, I'll keep going. Best leadership question on the planet is, how can I help you? Think in 2 years or 24 periods of 30 days, which is a brilliant way of thinking about it. And tries, I added one last one, tries make progress.
I like it. Deep dive recommendations, couple good books. Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, pretty good book. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willenick and Leif Babin, very, very good book. $1 Trillion Coach by Eric Schmidt. And of course, Roy, pull the book out. Where can we get your book? Where can we learn more about you?
So this is my seventh book in the Be Different or Be Dead series. It's called The Audacious Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 Billion. And it basically has got everything we just talked about, right? It breaks it down in terms of leadership, marketing, sales, customer service, strategic planning. And so all it is it's a compendium of what worked for us as we built this startup into $1 billion in annual sales. And so it's meant to be a guidebook, a how-to book, so you can open it up wherever and pick, if your challenge is marketing, picking up on the leadership piece. The leadership piece is really robust, and so hopefully that will be helpful. And the other 6 are there as well that look at different aspects of it. Come and visit me on my website, okay? It's bedifferentorbedead.com. I have a podcast on that website, which you can listen to, because I guest for a whole bunch of guys. You're the best ones, though, I have to tell you. So
thank you. We'll send you your $20
checks in the mail.
Letter.
So you can listen to some recordings, and I blog every week. So please come and subscribe to my blog. Both you guys, I want you to, because I can tell if you do or if you don't. So, I mean, I'll harass your ass if you don't.
Exactly. I already feel like I've been yelled at. Fine, Roy.
Put your textbook down, Chris.
God, for God's sakes.
There's one other thing that I want to say on the website, because I've tried to give it as many tools as I could. I've got a Be Different or Be Dead quiz, right? So if you want to figure out where you sit sort of on the continuum of being different or be dead, go and check out my quiz. It describes behaviors, and it asks you to rate yourself on those various behaviors. And then, of course, it's got an engine that tells you, where are you on a scale of 1 to 5 and be different or be dead. It's kind of a fun thing to do. It's not a bad way to kind of level set it. And look, I got an email. It's roy.osing@gmail.com. I love connecting with people. I love helping them. Okay, I get people sending me their draft only statements. Anthony, you mentioned only statement. Thank you for picking up on that, because it's one of the most important things that founding leaders should be thinking about. And I have people coming back. Hey, Roy, I heard you on this. Here's my only statement. What do you think? Gets us in a great dialogue. I feel really good, because it's a good way for me to kind of change one person, and maybe I'll change another person, and maybe help another person, and see where we go. So please take advantage of me. I'm here to be used and abused.
Excellent. I just have a feeling I'm going to take the quiz and Roy's going to just pop up.
I hope you do.
I put the textbook down, Chris. Anthony, Roy, thank you for joining us. It was a really, really good conversation, and I took a lot away from it. Anthony, what do we have coming up next?
Roy, again, thank you so much for adding so much value. So next we're going to be talking about again, building a social media strategy. I don't think we can talk about how to make social media better for us more. Maybe we could talk about it less, but we're still talking about it next week. And to everybody tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in. Visit us at howtofounder.com, where you can subscribe to all of our channels or just follow Chris and I on LinkedIn. Right. Again, Chris, good to see you guys. We'll talk to you guys all soon. Thanks.